Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning, and a very warm welcome to the session. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you also to TDRA for inviting us to share this session with you. This is all about thoughts, reflections, and the realities of communication. And this is part one of a two-part series on this very important topic. So, where do we start? Let's start with this thought. I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. One of the main differentiators for us as human beings is our ability to think and to exercise some control over what we think. So that's our first message of the day. We think, therefore we are, and we are human. So a quick introduction to myself. My name is Catherine Bentley. I am originally from the UK. My background in the UK was very much in financial services, corporate. So I worked for insurance companies and banks in a range of general management and marketing management positions before moving to the Middle East back in 2005. So I've been in this region now for some time, and my time here has focused purely on training, coaching, and consulting. So working across a range of different soft skills, but there has been really very much a communication skills thread through pretty much everything that I've been doing. So I'm very, very pleased to share this special program with you. So why are we here? Why are we here? So we're going to be looking today and in part two at the relationship between thoughts, how that's reflected in emotions, in our behavior, and how it then translates or can translate into the realities of communication. That is the basis of this program. So, another thought for us is the way that we think and consequently act upon this can be either a service or the opposite, a disservice to ourselves in terms of our professional reputation and brand, and or to our organization. This is the importance here, yeah? The way that we think does have a direct effect on how we behave and how that reflects on us and the organization that we may be representing. So today, part one, we're very much going to focus on below the surface. Below the surface. What is going on below the surface? What maybe people don't see necessarily in our behavior, in the way that we're speaking, in the way that we're interacting. What's going on below the surface to actually generate what is visible on the surface? Yeah, and we're going to consider how thoughts affect our actions. Actions then, in turn, translate into whether or not we succeed in our careers, in relationships, and generally in life. And also considering how thoughts play a part in our level of influence, in the quality of our relationships, and how we view the world in general. So that's our focus for part one. Part two of the program, at a later date, we'll take that above the surface and see how what's going on below the surface we can then project outwards in the way that we communicate and interact. So, how are we going to do this? Our roadmap for today is to take a look, first of all, about our brand. Who are we? What is our brand? Are we aware of our brand? This is at the foundation. And then the starting point in terms of thought recognition, how we own our thoughts and how we can then manage our thoughts. And then we're going to take a look at very, very important, simple, but important framework. Think, feel, act. and the relationship between those three elements and how we can make a change, to determine what comes to the surface in how we act, how we behave, and how we communicate. And how we can actually consciously make a choice to reframe thought for positive outcome, building in, of course, a whole framework and model for optimism. That's our roadmap for today. So let's make a start now. Let's make a start and ask this question: who are you? Who are you? Yeah, who are you? What is your brand? Are you aware of what your brand is and what you want it to be? So a quick little tester for us. We're going to offer you to take part now in our brand challenge. Okay. I'm just going to leave that slide for a few seconds for you to digest what is on there, not too long. And then I'm going to ask you to take part in the brand challenge. We have here in the box there in the left-hand column a number of what we call taglines, brand taglines. So these are words and phrases which organizations and brands use to summarize their positioning, what they're about, the direction as an organization. So, for example, the first one, I'm sure many of us are aware of this, I'm loving it, is the tagline which McDonald's use, yeah? So I'm going to give you 1 minute now to just look at the other taglines and see if you know which organizations or which brands these taglines actually represent. I'll give you 1 minute, guys, and the timer starts now. 30 seconds to go. All right, let's stop there and see where we got to. So you might want to check your own responses there. We said the first one, I'm loving it, McDonald's tagline. Inspire the next. This is a bit of a tricky one, a little obscure. This is actually a tagline which Hitachi used. Okay, I only know that one because my husband used to work for Hitachi. But what they're saying in that tagline, what they're saying is their positioning is to be leading edge, yeah, inspiring the next technology, innovation. That's the positioning. Have a break. I'm sure many of us recognize this one, particularly chocolate lovers. Kit Kat. Think different. This is a tagline which Apple use. And if you think about Apple as an organization, that's what they're all about. They're driven by this, thinking different, doing things differently, different operating systems and so on. That's the positioning. Experience amazing. That one's a little obscure as well. It's actually Lexus. But that's how they're positioning, amazing value for money. And an amazing quality of product. That's the positioning. Yes, I see Nadine has given me have a break Kit Kat. Well done, Nadine. Yeah. Life is short. Stay awake for it. That one is actually Caribou Coffee. No one out pizzas the Hut. It's Pizza Hut. The clue is there in the words. Born to Perform is actually a tagline for Jaguar. They're all about performance cars, yeah? Well done, Nadine, on Lexus. Yeah. Do the right thing. That one is actually Google. So Google tagline, do the right thing. And Nike, I'm sure many of us recognize as just do it. Okay, so that was just a little teaser, really, to get us thinking about brands and how brands actually position themselves to represent what they're about as an organization. The next question, though, is to ask you to think about this. If you had a tagline which was describing you as a professional, what would it be? What words, phrases could you use to describe what your brand is? And as we move through our careers, high value contributors and leaders, actually considering our brand, how our brand values work, how they align with the values of our organization, and how other people recognize these. Are our brand values visible? Do they come to the surface in the way that we communicate, in the way that we behave? There are many ways that you can go about looking at building your brand. There's just a template here to show you. It's about having a statement about who are you, what do you do, what makes you unique, what things are you passionate about, what are you known for, how would other people describe you, what are 3 compliments that people would say about you, what is it that makes people stop and comment, and what are your key values? And then your key brand qualities, summarizing what they might be and how they align to the brand qualities of your organization. And then actually thinking about how your brand is communicated. So what is it about the things on the inside of you that come through your communication? So this is a start point to get you thinking about your brand, yeah? And asking yourself the question, what is your personal brand? How do you like to be described? And how you like to live your brand values? This is at the very basis of our professional presence. So a few things for us to think about there in terms of our brand. We then start to focus on the whole area of what we actually repeatedly do becomes what we are. So Aristotle said this, Greek philosopher, many years ago, we are what we repeatedly do. So if we repeatedly communicate in a certain way, that's how we become known. That becomes our brand. If we behave, if we communicate, if we think in a certain way to make us communicate and behave in a certain way, that becomes our brand. So this is where we've got to peel back right to the basis and start to really focus on recognizing our thoughts, our patterns of thoughts, to really start to manage these. Because the way that we think is ultimately going to come through in the way that we communicate and we behave, our professional and personal brand. So thought, recognition, and management. Thought, recognition, and management. And it comes down to this, really. The start point for us is about changing your life with the power of thinking. We have all got choices. Yeah, we've all got choices in the way that we think. We might believe we haven't. We might believe that certain triggers, things that happen, start us thinking in a certain way. That is then going to lead to emotion and it's going to lead to action. We've all got the power to stop and start to really recognize, own, and manage the way that we think and the patterns that are then reflected. So we're really going to start to look at that today. So remember, your thoughts affect your actions. Your actions are then going to translate into whether or not you succeed. And it's also, your thoughts are going to play a huge role in your level of influence, in your relationships, and how you view the world generally. We call this the mirror in loop, the mirroring loop. Yeah, thoughts are expressed through actions, and actions are going to mirror and reinforce thoughts. In the middle there, we've got another huge area, and that's emotion. So we're going to start to look at that chain today, how all of this works together, how they form patterns. And there's another little model I want to share with you. You may have come across this before, often known as Batari's box. Think about this. My attitude. And your attitude is going to be made up of the way that you think and the way that you feel. That's going to affect my behavior. My behavior, what I did, how I communicate, what I say, what I do. That's going to affect your attitude, what you think, how you feel, which is then going to affect your behavior. And it goes round, it goes round. And when you get into a situation of what we call an impasse with people, where you don't seem to be able to communicate, or you can't work on something, it's going around in circles, we've got to stop and think about where we can change these patterns. Where do we break that and start to move away from more constructive outcome? So, from the beginning, it's about thinking, where do we start with this? And the start point is really recognizing the stages in this cycle, what the stages are, and where we've got the power to choose and influence our thinking, our emotional response, and then our behavior. Plato, many, many years ago, said human behavior flows from three main sources: desire, emotion, and knowledge. Desire and emotion are our feelings, and knowledge is a lot to do with how we're thinking. So this is where we get what we call the think, feel, and act cycle. Think, feel, act. It's the thinking and the feeling that's going to drive the behavior. So when we realize that our behavior or our communication needs to change, we've got to peel back and really focus on our way of thinking and how that generates and works with certain emotions for a more positive outcome. So I've got a video to share with you now. I particularly like this video. It's taken from somebody who's involved in military training. So this guy is involved in training with people within the military and how they can work on their thinking and feeling for better outcome in their training. So have a look at this. I think it's very clear in how it explains the relationship between think, feel, and act.
Hi guys, hope you'll feel okay today. But what if you don't? It's okay not to feel okay. And today I'm going to be explaining the think, feel, act model. And this should explain some of the reasons why we don't always feel okay. And in fact, sometimes why we do feel really good. So, think, feel, act model. It works both ways. You can see the arrows going both ways. We've got think at the top, then the feel in red for a particular reason, which I'll come on to in a minute. And then you've got the act. So starting off at the top, what do you think? What is it that you're thinking? Why are you thinking that? Have positive self-talk. Are you thinking, I can do this? I'm going to smash my fitness test. I'm going to pass with flying colours. Or are you having some sort of dread? Are you having negative self-talk? I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail. You can't do this. What is that self-talk that's happening in your minds? Because this has an effect on how you feel. And how you feel, the reason it's in red is that's the temperature gauge. That is the thermometer. Because normally you won't recognise that, but you will recognise that. You will know, whilst you're watching this video, whether you feel happy, hopefully, whether you're feeling sad, whether you're feeling anxious, or if you're worried, maybe you're worried about an exam that you've got this afternoon or later on in the week. So you will know how you're feeling. That's the temperature gauge. Listen to that, pay attention to that. So this is the emotional side of us. This is a reflection of the chemicals that are running through our body. Have you just done some PT, maybe? Maybe you've gone out, you've done a run, and you come back and you're charged and you're full of endorphins and you're feeling great. Or perhaps you're feeling worried and anxious, scared, and you've got the stress hormone coursing through your veins, you've got cortisol. Maybe that's happening. That will have a direct impact of the way you act. And the way you act can be split into two areas. So it can be split into the physical response, or it can be split into your actions, your behavior. The behavior, you can choose what you do. Maybe sometimes there's only a very split second before the time where you've gone past the point of no return. But you can always choose. You always have a choice in how you behave. The physical response, you can't really choose how you physically responding, because that's a natural instinct response. So for example, if you are thinking, I can't do this, and you're feeling worried and anxious and stressed, then your physical response might be increased heart rate, shallow, fast breathing, it might be sweating. That's the sort of physical response that you can't control. But your behavior, you can always control, if you're aware of what's going on. So the first step is awareness. Awareness is key. If you're aware of the way you're behaving, if you're aware of the way you're feeling, and it's more likely going to come out in that, or you're aware of what you're thinking, then that's the first step. Then you can take action. The second step is taking action. There is no point being aware if you do nothing. So going back to the example of exam, if you're thinking, I can't do this, and you're feeling worried and anxious, and therefore you've got a behavioural response or an automatic response in that you're feeling worried and you're maybe increased heart rate, maybe that links to a mind blank when you try and think about what you need to know, but actually you can't draw on any of that information because you've got a mind blank, because you're under stress. Well, you can take action. Maybe you can go and seek support. So you can go and see your trainer and ask for maybe a bit more remedial sessions to better understand the content. Or you can do some buddy-buddy system, go and see somebody on your course, work with them, do some extra revision, and have that knowledge, grow your knowledge, which will make you feel more confident. And that because you feel more confident, like you know the subject well enough to pass your exam, you're going to be acting a little bit different. You're going to be more calm when you're sat there in these exam conditions and you're expected to come up with the goods.
Okay, I'm going to pause that there. So what the gentleman is saying or showing very well, very simply, but graphically, is the relationship here between the way that we think about something, the way that we feel, and how that then translates into physical, some kind of physical behavior, or some other kind of behavior. So physical response, biological, physiological, or behavior. And it's about very much here looking at patterns, recognizing patterns in think, feel, and act. So behavioral patterns and habits, and we all have them. We all have them. We might not be fully aware of them, but we all have a number of patterns that exist between what we think, what we feel, and how we actually then communicate or behave. So have a look at this little video clip which explains a little bit about this, about the difference between behaving on autopilot, so letting our patterns just take over, or responding or behaving with intent. Have a look at this. I'm going to mute it on here.
I would hypothesize that 95% of the day, all of us are just on autopilot. We get up in the morning, we start doing our things and blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden it's 9:30 and we're in the office and, the phone rings and we're just kind of going through these steps without a lot of mindfulness. And that's very efficient. The problem with it is when we are on autopilot, we're not being careful. When we're in a similar situation, maybe the same situation, we're driving down the same road, it's very, very efficient for us to not pay a lot of attention to that. We're able to think about something else and do something else and respond very quickly. The issue is that when we're in times of change, when we're in a new role, we're in a new situation, when things are complex, we've got to be able to get off of this autopilot. What's happening is we're following these patterns, and they're formed at a neurological level. Our brains like to form patterns. We start associating certain neural networks, and this idea and this idea and this response become connected. And we actually begin to dedicate more and more neurons to that pattern. This step of recognizing your patterns is about seeing what are your own typical reactions and being able to focus in when this stimulus, what is my typical response? And that stimulus response, it could be when I see this or when I think this. When I think somebody is not being honest with me, typical response. When I feel, typical response. So for me, for example, when I feel guilty, my typical response is to attack. And what happens is that allows me to push the guilt away a little bit. One of my patterns is when I feel overwhelmed, I withdraw. And that gives me some benefits. It lets me kind of recover my energy and not cope with this thing that's overwhelming. On the other hand, it causes me to be conflict avoidant, and it causes me to not address the issue that's making me overwhelmed. So every pattern has costs and benefits. Essentially, though, the first step here is seeing that we have these typical ways of responding and noticing in ourselves when stimulus, typical response, beginning to develop this inventory of our own typical responses. And that allows us to notice when we're on autopilot and when we're being intentional.
So this is all about recognizing our own patterns of thinking, feeling, and then responding. This is what this is about. And it's worth actually spending some time and focusing on your own typical situations which you think you want to manage in a different way, and identifying what that situation is, what your thoughts are, what kind of thoughts you would typically have in this situation, what kind of feelings, what kind of emotions you can identify in this situation, and then what are likely to be your actions, the way that you behave, the way that you communicate. When this is a reaction, autopilot, what typically happens? So we can come up with a statement. When this situation, I typically think this, I typically feel this, I typically do this. This becomes your mental model. Some of your patterns will be serving you well, will be a good reflection of your personal brand or the professional brand that you're actually representing. Others may not be serving you well. They may be a disservice to you. And it's identifying which of these patterns you want to review, you want to change for better outcome. So, to give you an example of this, consider this pattern, okay? A situation which doesn't result in a positive outcome, yeah? A typical pattern here could be, I think they're going to make me do this again. Yeah, it could be something at work, it could be something in your personal life. They're going to make me do something, which would suggest some kind of pressure for you to do something which isn't desirable for you. Yeah. You might have emotions of frustration, being irritated, being angry. And the way that you act may be to dismiss, to give up on the other person, yeah, to avoid building that relationship or working with them. This could be a pattern. Now, what can we do here? What can we do? It's about applying consequential thinking. It's about stop, considering, what do we really want the outcome to be? Yeah, do we want that outcome to be that we give up on this relationship, we give up on the situation, we don't try to work things out, create best outcome? Or could it be that we want a different outcome? And how can we do that? So it's about looking at changing the start points, asking a question. What does this person really need? Why are they taking this position? Might not be what I want to hear from them. Why is it? What are the reasons for that? That automatically then would change the emotion, and we become more caring or more empathic, or some situations more loving or compassionate. And that then generates a different kind of behavior, because we start to take some responsibility for some part of the situation by changing the way that we think. And it's really all about recognizing the triggers. When situation, it could be when they try to make me do this again in an unreasonable request, or when somebody attacks me, I typically do this, or I think, or I feel this. Recognizing the triggers. This is the start point for us actually identifying, owning, and managing the thought process. Because we're all able to choose, yeah? So consider your recurring situations, and it's worth writing down your think, feel, act, understanding what your triggers are, because remember, you are able to make choices. We can all choose to reframe, to think about a situation in a different way. What does this person really want? Yeah? Or what do I really want the outcome to be? And start to approach things in a different way. And the other key thing for us in terms of our thought process and managing positive outcome is engaging optimism. Engaging optimism. So, what is optimism? Let me ask this question to the group. What is optimism? Anybody like to give us, maybe on the chat box here, what would be your definition of optimism? How would you define optimism? Anybody got any ideas on how they would define optimism? Nadine, yes. So having a positive mindset, yes, it is. What does that actually mean? Does it mean that we always think everything's okay? Because sometimes it isn't, yeah? Believing good things will happen, yes. That's right, Nadine. They may not be happening now, yeah? They may not be happening now because, let's be honest, we're all in situations at times that are not kind of situation we want to be in, or they're challenging. Yeah, we all experience things that we didn't want, or wouldn't be our first choice. Things that test us in many ways. But optimism really is about being able to see beyond the clouds. The clouds are there, but we can see beyond now. And as you said there, believing good things will happen. Yeah, the sun is over there somewhere. The sun will come up again. Yeah, it might not be immediate, but it will come up again. And if you think about the whole COVID situation, the challenges which everybody has had to face, the people that have, in my opinion, that have done well in the whole pandemic challenge have been the ones that have looked beyond now and looked to the future. Equip themselves so that they are ready, they're poised, ready for the opportunities that lie ahead. Because after every kind of crisis, there's opportunity. Yeah, if you think about wars that have happened, looking into history, after periods of wartime, there is always some kind of opportunity or boom. It may not be immediate, but into the future, opportunities do open. So it could be something like this, yeah, looking beyond the now, a little bit of a cartoon here. These poor people, I lost everything but my dartboard. Yeah, want to play a few games while we're being wait to be rescued. So looking beyond the challenge to things that we can do. Yeah, and these poor people here, they can wait to be rescued in the middle of the ocean playing darts. But on a serious note, this quote, yeah, no pessimist ever discovered the secrets of the stars. So optimism. There are 3 factors in optimism, 3 different ways that we can adopt this positive mindset, yeah? And as Nadine is saying here, even if things are happening, there's always a way to turn around the situation. And even if we can't turn it around straight away, it's about the way we view a situation, the thought process that we have about it. 3 factors in terms of optimism: time, isolation, and effort. Time, isolation, and effort. We're going to look at each of these 3 and think about how we can apply these in our ways of thinking. So consider this statement here. I lost the contract. We've all had a situation where we've lost something, whether it be a contract, we didn't complete a project, we didn't do something as we were supposed to do, something didn't work out. So I lost the contract. I'm never going to get promoted now. It will ruin my career, and there's nothing I can do about it. Okay? This is not a reflection in any way of optimism. It's quite the reverse. It's quite the reverse. So let's break that down and look at it in a bit more detail. Time. If we think about a challenge, we've got to stop and think about this challenge. Is this permanent? Yeah? Or is it temporary? Isolation. Is this an isolated instance? Yeah? Or is it going to continue for the rest of our lives? Most things, most challenges are isolated. And effort. Am I really powerless? Or with some effort, as Nadine says, there's always a way to turn a situation around. So consider that statement again. I lost the contract and I'm never going to get promoted. That's taking a view that setback is permanent. I'm never going to get promoted because I lost a contract. It will ruin my career. It's pervasive. It's going to affect my whole life, my whole career. Pervasive. And there's nothing I can do about it. Powerless. That is a model of pessimistic thinking. Turn it around. Look at it in a different way. I lost the contract, but this is a temporary setback. Yeah, it might be pretty uncomfortable right now, but it's temporary. When we had lockdown, for many of us, it was very unpleasant, but we knew it wouldn't be forever. Temporary. This is a learning opportunity for me. It's not going to affect my whole career. It's isolated and I can actually learn from it. And now I can take what I've learned and with effort, if I put my mind to it, I can be stronger to win the next contract. And who knows, the next contract, the next opportunity might be a much better one. And what I've learned from this could put me in a better position to succeed. So that is an example of changing a thought process from considering things to be permanent to temporary, pervasive to isolated, considering ourselves to be powerless to knowing that with effort, we can turn something around. So permanent is saying things like, it's never going to end, as opposed to, there's real progress towards a solution. Isolation, this messes everything up, compared to, it's only one part of my life, or I'm just having, a difficult period, but it will get better. And taking a view of, I see no way to make any change, to knowing that if I work hard, I can make change. I can learn from it. Everything happens for a reason. The reason might not be obvious at that time, but everything happens for a reason. Yeah, and we always say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger and makes you better able to cope with the next challenge. So it's about thinking about what puts you into the red and what puts you into the black or the blue. And we often think about in the red in terms of our financial situations. What kinds of things put you into the red financially? Yeah, it could be heavy bills. It could be, things that you anticipate, things going wrong, car breaks down, or you get a bill that you hadn't expected, or you need to support people back home with certain things. What puts you into the black can be things like bonuses, or things working out better than you expected. It's the same thing with our experiences in life. And it's about thinking, where are you now in a situation? What's putting you into what we see to be the red effect, as moving into a more negative frame of mind, and what it takes to put things into the blue. How can we move more into the blue in terms of the way that we think? So being in the red, it's about negative, pessimistic thought. And what we need to be doing is working on our strategy for being in the blue, in positive mindset, optimism, engaging optimism. And there's one further model I want to share with you for today. We're going to be building on this in part 2 and looking at how we actually translate this into positive communication styles and methods. But for today, I want to introduce you to the responsibility and choice circles. So we say we've got 3 different circles we can consider. The first one is this one. Things that we can control what we do. We're in complete control here of what we can do in a situation. These are the easiest ones in terms of our behavior. Yeah, these are the ones that we can see pretty much that we're in the blue here. A lot easier to have positive thoughts, leading to positive emotion and positive action. Second circle are things that we can't control in terms of what we do, but we can influence. We can't directly control, but we can, if we're mindful, we can influence. And then the third set of circumstances, and this is where people tend to think about themselves potentially moving into the red zone. Yeah, things which we can't necessarily control or influence, but what we can do here is control what we say and what our response is to these situations. So one of the things to reflect on really between now and the next session is which situations in your lives fall into these 3 circles, identifying which of them fall into these circles and how far these pushes into the blue zone, that positive mindset, that positive way of thinking, and which might be pushing us more to the red side. Yeah, we know that we can, because we have choice, we can always work on reframing, but understanding which situations are directing us to these zones is a start point for us understanding where we need to really work on our reframing. And it's all about how we start thinking positive, how we then generate positive emotion, and our acts, our thought, our behavior, our communication starts then to mirror our thoughts. That's what this is all about. And it's asking this question: can you break through? Can you break through? And can you break through this challenge of taking ownership, identifying what your thought processes are, where it's pushing you into the red, where it's pushing you into the blue, taking ownership and proactively reframing. We all have the ability to do this, but we've got to want to do it. Our motivation for wanting to do it is the realization that what we think is ultimately going to be reflected in our emotion, the way that we make decisions, our communication, and our behavior, and that then affects our brand, our personal brand, our professional brand, and the way that the world sees us. I have a particular person, it's quite close to me actually, it's a family member, I won't say who has developed over the years a very, very distinctive brand for herself as a very, shall we say, negative thinker. Because of the way that she communicates and behavior, and it all goes back to an extremely negative way of thinking, and hasn't taken the time to actually stop and analyze her patterns and a way of viewing situations. If she did that and really worked on that, I guarantee that would then be reflected in the way that she feels, the way that she makes decisions, and then her communication, and her behavior, and ultimately her reputation, what people say about her. So the question, can you break through? So in terms of key takeaways from this session, it's about remembering thoughts have a direct effect on our communication and behavior. Your personal branding is going to be affected by your thought patterns. And the start point, recognizing the triggers for certain thoughts, feelings, and patterns, recognizing what those triggers are, and reframing for what the outcome is that you're looking for. What do we really want in this situation? Yeah, what do we really want? And then understanding and being able to work with this thought, feel, act cycle. Understand where we make a change and what impact that's going to have in the cycle. And then optimism. Are you really truly adopting a model of optimism? Yeah, do you really view setbacks, challenges as temporary? Yeah, do you view them as isolated and not affecting the big picture? And do you really believe in your power to work to overcome challenges? That's the key to optimism. And it is about this, the power of choice. We can change the way that we think if we want to do. The choice is yours. The first step is understanding yourself, reflecting, understanding the way that you think and the patterns of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. So I'm going to stop there and ask if anybody has got any questions. If you'd like to pop them on the chat box, please. We're monitoring that now. Any questions at all on this whole area? Any questions, guys? Just whilst we're waiting for people to type the questions, one thing that you might want to think about after today is your commitment to action, yeah? And from some of the things that we've discussed today, things that you might have identified that you want to do less of. Yeah, so it could be that in your way of thinking, you want to do less of considering challenges to be overwhelming. Yeah, and affecting everything, and start to think about them being more as temporary setbacks. Things that you might identify from today that you want to keep doing. You're already doing certain things. Maybe you're already, exercising your choice to view things in a different way, to reframe thoughts. And things that you might want to stop doing. Yeah, you might want to stop automatically considering a situation to be permanent, a challenge to be permanent. Question here, what comes first, thoughts or feelings? Now, this is a very good question. There's a lot of debate about this. Now, we would think that probably logically, thought comes first, followed by feeling, followed by action. In reality, your thought can very, very, very quickly, within split seconds, generate an emotion. Yeah, so the two are often very difficult to separate. Very difficult to separate. But really, it is a thought process that will trigger an emotion. Your cognitive will work first, and then very, very quickly followed by generating some kind of chemical reaction and emotion. Yeah, the two often are seen to be together. And we might even think that as humans, emotion comes first. Actually, your brain will have sent a signal, to actually generate that chemical reaction, which is the emotion. Is it possible for us to think positively all the time? It's possible for us as humans, if we want to reframe the way that we think. It could be that our first reaction, the emotion that's generated, our initial response to a situation might not be the most positive one, but it's really about us retraining the way that we think. Patterns and habits are formed, and they become quite hard coded into our brains, into our systems. And what has to happen is, in order to take away old patterns, we've got to form new ones. A neurological level, we've got to form new ones. So it's about, over time, replacing habits, patterns with new ones. We can't, as human beings, always have the right kind of way of thinking about things first time. But where we recognize recurring situations, we can start to take away the negative patterns from those situations, replace them with new patterns as we go through life. How easy is it for us to change a pattern? It takes a while. It takes a while. And it really is typically, it's like habits that we try to change. How long does it take to change a habit, say, of stopping smoking? It takes a while. We've got to replace it with new ways of behaving, new ways of thinking, new ways of feeling. It does take a while, but if we want to do it, we have the power of choice. Okay, any more questions at all? So my message really from today is to keep looking beneath the surface. To keep looking, what is it that's going on beneath the surface that triggers emotions, that triggers our ways of behaving, and observe it in people around us. Yeah, keep looking below the surface. And then what we're going to be doing in part 2 is considering how we transfer positive thought into different communication frameworks and styles, because it's reflected. Yeah, and we're looking at ways of doing that to form that whole cycle. Remember, my attitude affects my behavior, affects your attitude, affects your behavior, and it goes round again. So how we then take this way of thinking and apply that into communication reality in the real world, the bit that we see above the surface. So that will form part 2 of the program. So I'd like to thank you all for attending today. I'd like to thank you for your questions, for your feedback. And I'd also like to, again, to thank TDRA for inviting us to share this very important topic with everyone. Remember, you have the power of choice. So thank you. Good day to everyone, and take care. Thank you.